Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for coming. It's great to see everybody. A lot of familiar faces, a couple new ones. Appreciate that. My name is Christina Alcorn, and I'm Vice Chair of the Board of the Reston Museum. And on behalf of the museum, I want to welcome you tonight to our presentation on Reston Activism. Just a quick note about who we are and what we do. The Reston Museum is a community organization that serves as a resource to preserve the past, educate the present, and inform the future. Our goals are to engage the public in exploration of community history, build a sense of community, promote Reston as a tourist destination, and to collect, preserve, and interpret the artifacts and documents of Reston's history. As a nonprofit organization, we depend on donations and memberships from the community. So if you're not already a member, please come talk to us after the presentation and we can fix that. And also please come visit the museum if you haven't already. We're very close, we're right around the corner behind the fountain. We'd love to see you. And to learn more about our upcoming activities, you can check out restonmuseum.org, and if you sign up for our newsletter, you'll be informed about upcoming events. For tonight's presentation, Emma Strano, Visitor Services Assistant at the museum, will provide an overview of Reston activism focused on racial equality, accessibility, and fair housing. Emma is a recent graduate of George Mason University and holds a BA in Public History and a minor in Art History. Following Emma's presentation, Kerrie Wilson, CEO of Cornerstones, will discuss the history of Cornerstones. And this will be followed by a Q&A period, so if you want to hold your questions until then, we will have a nice Q&A period. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Emma.
Thank you, and good evening, everyone. I'm honored to be here and speak on behalf of the Reston Museum, so let's get into it. So, Reston is full of community organizations, many aiming to make Reston a better place, either by providing needed services such as housing or recreational opportunities. Although this here is not a comprehensive list, it is a sample to show just how Restonians have been actively engaged in their community since its founding. Several of these were founded in the 1960s as well. Today we will be discussing the history of a few organizations, including Common Ground and Reston Black Focus, and then we'll be handing the presentation over to Cornerstones. Reston was an integrated community when the majority of Virginia was not only segregated, but actively resisting desegregation. Later in life, Simon recalled his original plans for Reston and said, "The idea of community means people of all incomes and races living happily together. It was inconceivable that we do anything other than inclusiveness." We were turned down by 50 banks for normal construction loans. They were not interested in talking to us. During Reston's 1966 dedication, the Secretary of Department of the Interior, Stuart Udall, stated in his remarks that the challenge is to make new towns truly representative of America. In this land of opportunity, no town can claim to be truly American if it is an enclave of the well-to-do or the private preserve of any single ethnic or racial group. He believed that Reston would successfully face this challenge. Reston's founding as an open community was before the Fair Housing Act, which prohibited discrimination in housing due to race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, or disability. Fairfax County began integrating schools in 1960, only 1 year before Simon purchased this property. While Reston was advertised as an open community, it still faced its own challenges. Black families moving to Reston early on were small in number. While Reston was advertised as an open community, it still faced its own challenges. Black families moving to Reston early on were small in number, and in 1966, Ebony magazine wrote several articles on Reston. The magazine discussed that while Reston was advertised its status as an open community, there was skepticism. Virginia's reputation regarding discrimination was well known, and many were concerned that they would not be welcome. One barrier that the magazine listed was housing. Many African-American families could not put a $30,000 down payment on a home. The article was hopeful, however, that with plans to include rental homes and homes that would accept FHA loans, more Black families could purchase property in Reston. They also thought the high cost of living in Reston has placed it beyond the reach of many. Construction of a new USGS building there and employing 24,000 people will likely spur low-income housing and integration. Accessibility to work, which we'll discuss in a bit, therefore was seen as a way to encourage racial diversity in Reston. It was a common notion that many moved to Reston because they valued similar ideals. Ebony magazine claimed that unlike other places in Fairfax, Restonians were more accepting and said good when they heard that the community was not segregated. For people who move to Reston are not running away. They're hunting for an ideal community where their children can mature under the best circumstances, while their own recreational and cultural needs are satisfied. They accept anyone who is trying to achieve the same goals in a congenial atmosphere. At the time Ebony published their articles, roughly 1,100 people lived in Reston, and among that number were only 5 African-American families. In addition to housing issues, several Restonians stated that they had encountered discrimination within the Gulf Reston sales office, and were disappointed at the lack of integrated materials in schools. They believed that Gulf Reston could do more in its advertising to stress that Reston was an open community. Reston's community response to racial discrimination was the creation of Reston Black Focus, which was formed in 1969. Their mission was serving as a framework for Black cultural, educational, social service, civic, and social activities in Reston and the surrounding area. Reston Black Focus sponsored a Black Arts Festival, which focused Reston's community attention towards the contributions that Black people have made and continue to make to the life and culture of all people, which included dance, music, poetry, painting, fashions, foods, crafts, and books. They also raised funds for different projects with this festival. Beneficiaries of past festivals include AfriCare, Howard University Mississippi Project, Northern Virginia Music Center, DC Black Repertory Theater, and more. A quote reads, "Black Focus is proud of its contributions toward making our community one, where all kinds of people can flourish, contribute, and grow." The purpose of the Black Arts Festival, according to one article, is to demonstrate that Black people who live in affluent suburbs do not wish to and no longer need to deny their particular lifestyle, but rather that lifestyle can become a part of suburbia. A reversal of the previous pattern where Black people who made it to the suburbs were compelled by the system to be more white than everyone else. Besides the Black Arts Festival, Reston Black Focus worked to ensure suitable materials on Black American heritage were incorporated into social studies programs, and that school and county libraries had a large selection of books concerning Black art, literature, and history. Their goals also included increasing job opportunities, sponsoring adult study groups on art, music, and literature, increasing community communication, and, quote, maintaining a swinging, non-uptight, friendly atmosphere in Reston. In 1974, Reston Black Focus folks stated that they had a training seminar on Black history and racial attitudes in schools. They presented to school teachers, held meetings with teachers, principals, and administrators at local schools to discuss the needs and contributions of Black school children, and provided testimony at the Fairfax County School Board budget hearings regarding special educational needs for Black children, were instrumental in persuading Fairfax County to establish a human relations staff working in the schools, and testified at the Governor's Conference against compulsory testing of all Black school children in Virginia for sickle cell. In 1969, they planted a tree in memory of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., started a book group, held 5 Black Arts Festivals, worked with Gulf Reston to encourage the hiring of Black Restonians, and presented on the impact of racially stereotyped advertising. Black Focus helped Reston create a lasting recognition and appreciation of Black culture, and today Reston hosts a Martin Luther King Jr. Day event, as well as a multicultural festival by the Reston Community Center. Opening its doors in the early 70s, Common Ground, founded by Reston's first minister, Embry Rucker, was meant to aid Reston's community in any way needed. Programs under Common Ground included Common Ground Child Care Center, Reston Nursing Service, a crisis intervention group, a babysitter referral service, an employment service, Common Ground bus, a coffee house, and much more. As Embry Rucker put it, we fill in gaps. When we see a need, we take action. Embry Rucker made Reston his home in 1969 and was determined to create a church in Reston that was open to all, with all involved reaching out in Christian responsibility in all directions. The concept of community ministry was a driving force behind Rucker's activism in Reston. In order to reach the most amount of people, congregation was held in Lake Ann Hall. Rucker states that when he came to Reston, he refused to encourage in-group formation and reiterated that his ministry was an unselective community without taste. Not a separate religious community, but simply the community of people, some of whom come here on Sundays. That congregation is a verb, not a noun, a desire that people come and they go. All of the contributions that Embry Rucker made were made with one goal in mind, maintaining a sense of community by creating a safe haven for its members. One way he was able to achieve this was by emphasizing listening to people. In his words, he would talk to at least 15 people a day. Listening and talking was an effective form of community activism. He would talk to individuals who were out of work, impoverished, runaways, parents of runaways, those in the hospital, anyone who needed someone to listen. The book New Towns, Another Way to Live states, when teenagers need a place to crash, they call Embry. When a woman is upset because her husband leaves her, she calls Embry. When the elderly get lonely, they call Embry. When you haven't been to church in a long time and you need someone to marry you or marry your friend, you ask Embry. Rucker also allowed others to act out their desire for community activism and supported them in their endeavors. In its peak, Common Ground had 80 to 90 volunteers a week. And an early pamphlet created by Common Ground reads, "All new self-help community projects are supported, ideas are welcome." A product of this support came in the form of the Common Ground busing system. Residents had expressed their issue regarding transportation to Embry Rucker and that they had a difficult time getting around without a car. So Rucker fundraised and purchased 2 old buses, had gasoline donated from a local Gulf station, allowed local merchants to use the bus's advertising space, and recruited and scheduled volunteer drivers consisting of retirees, pilots, architects, and anyone else willing to donate their time to provide this service to Restonians, which proved to be quite a success. Dubbed the Common Ground Bus and later transforming into the Reston Internal Bus System, gaining more support from Fairfax County, the Commonwealth of Virginia, and fairs. Here is a photo of Embry Rucker and his good friend Priscilla Ames, who was another community activist in Reston. And here we have a short clip with Martha Panino requesting that the shelter be named after Embry Rucker.
Madam Chairman, if you were to go out and stop some citizens, let's say like Ann Plotz of Reston, and ask, who is the most popular, who's the most loved citizen of Reston? I'm sure the answer would be Embry Rucker. If you were to ask people who's done the most and touched the most lives in the Reston community, I think the answer would be Embry Rucker. Embry Rucker has been very supportive over the years of the persons in greatest need, whether he was an Episcopal minister who's now retired, whether it was the religious request, whether it was social service, whether it was a criminal problem, whether it was family violence, whether it was an abused child, whatever it was, Embry and receive help, counseling, and get an answer to their problem. Mr. Rucker has been very helpful to me and the citizens in the formation of the shelter for the homeless in Reston. And I floated an idea last week, and it caught on like wildfire. I asked some citizens what they thought of the idea of naming the shelter for the homeless after Embry Rucker. Well, it's been a landslide, Madam Chairman. People have responded absolutely overwhelmingly. Embry has not been in very good health this past winter. He suffered a number of heart attacks, and today, maybe about this time, is going through major surgery that involves the heart. There is no set policy in Fairfax County on naming buildings, and I certainly don't want this shelter to be named after Embry posthumously. I think it's much better to name the building while the person still can enjoy the fact that the person has been recognized for their good works. I've talked to members of staff, and Madam Chairman, I would move that the Board of Supervisors go on record as approving the naming of the shelter for the homeless in Reston after Embry Rucker.
Second. Yes, Mr. Davis.
You know, I can't think of any time we don't have a housing subcommittee meeting that Mr. Rucker isn't there. He has been a champ on this long before it became fashionable to worry about homeless people and low-income housing and so on. And I can't think of a more appropriate gesture, Madam Chairman, Madam Vice Chairman, than to name this shelter. This is certainly well earned on his part.
Mr. Rucker is probably, as Mrs. Panino says, the most outstanding citizen in Reston and one of the most giving people that there is. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, please say nay. Chair votes
Thank
aye.
you. Madam Chairman, that shall make a man that is very happy. And it'll make hundreds of, maybe thousands of Reston citizens very pleased because it's a very positive act.
So as it was in 1989, the Reston North County Homeless Shelter was renamed the Embry Rucker Shelter for the Homeless, a tribute to Embry Rucker's activism in Reston. This concludes the first portion of tonight's program. Now I will turn it over to Kerrie Wilson, the CEO of Cornerstones. Cornerstones exists so that individuals and families in the Dulles corridor who are homeless, isolated, or living in poverty can access resources that offer stability, empowerment, and hope for healthy and connected lives. Cornerstone's signature approach, working in purposeful and targeted partnerships, brings together people and strategies from multiple sectors to harness and target expertise and resources for greater community well-being. Kerrie Wilson has been the CEO of Cornerstones, formerly Reston Interfaith, since 2001 and has 40 years experience in advocacy, policy development, and nonprofit leadership in the field of health and human services. Kerrie holds fast to the vision of a community where all have equitable access and the resources they need to participate and prosper. True to that purpose, Kerrie has been a champion for the affordable housing and co-chairs the Board of Supervisors appointed Fairfax County Affordable Housing Advisory Council and serves on the boards of a number of local, regional, and statewide boards and chambers of commerce. She has been a resident of Northern Virginia since 1976. Without further ado, I will now turn the presentation over to Kerrie Wilson. Thank you
so much. This first picture, and I'm not going to try to play this video clip, but you saw, just thinking about from Common Ground and thinking about the work that was done. This is a picture of an early Reston Interfaith board meeting, and Bill Jackson, who many of you know, one of the early chairs of Reston Interfaith, here. This is a group founded in 1970. Reston Interfaith were members of 6 of the first congregations in Reston who came together to sort of see how would Bob Simon's vision for an inclusive, equitable community be carried out. And in particular, our focus was really on thinking about affordable housing. And as housing was built, would it be livable? Would it be affordable throughout history? And so that was the founding vision that these members had. And I think in part because no matter how good the plans and how much you can lay out and think about the wonderful amenities and everything we enjoy here in Reston, roads and recreational facilities, jobs close to home, housing, there will still be needs that planning can't meet. And so I think that is truly what Reston Interfaith was all about, and beginning to think about those issues. Today, we have grown, and just for a little perspective, we have grown as an agency, changed our name in 2012, and nobody liked that. The folks from Reston hated it, the faith communities hated it, and I would tell a bad joke about a priest, a rabbi, and a pastor who cornered me and said, why did you change your name? And reminding them all, where have they been? The faith is about faith in action. And the faith communities, which is such a big part of our work every day, so very involved on our board, but that it was important for us to think about those roots issues that Bob Simon handed to us, that our founders brought, and really what Cornerstones meant for our board at the time that we changed was about what are the foundational issues that every family needs. And I think that's where we grew, and this also allowed us, because we had begun to meet needs beyond the Reston borders, in Herndon, growing beyond that. And as you can see today, which is perhaps scary, we touch the lives of more than 16,000 people each year. And I think when we think about what that means, 5,000 children
thinking about that in our community. We certainly have grown as an organization. I note thinking about Embry and the, out there, the volunteerism. And when I first came to work, Priscilla handing me, I would get something in the mail every week with that week's clippings from the local papers, telling me what was going on, before Fairfax County, telling me what I needed to do. And I think about them and the way they volunteer. And I will say today, many of you in this room, supporters and volunteers, have helped us with the voice that is certainly Cornerstones. As we grew, one of the things we tried to stay very close to, of course, was our mission of service. You mentioned the first affordable housing in Reston, built behind the U.S. Geological Survey. That was land that was proffered to us, and Reston Interfaith Housing Corporation built that development, Laurel Glade Apartments, with K. Fritz Foundation, and from there took the developers' fees to begin to think about what other needs. Child Care Center and Laurel Learning Center was established. And so throughout our history, you'll see that our work has always been about providing stability, that safety net, working with folks at the shelter, providing those unmet needs. And I can say the last 3 years, the pandemic, I think for us, as we came into our 50th anniversary, I think it really brought home to all of us how important it was to be a partner with Fairfax County, with community, and seeing the lives that were changed by this pandemic, and that frankly will be a long recovery. So stability is easy, it's the safety net, but over the years we really grew programs, and programs like Sarah's founded a nonprofit center, a trusted resource where people could come in and find anything they needed. So not one man, Embry, answering the call, but many volunteers and many organizations who have expertise in immigration legal assistance, which wasn't an issue in this community back in 1970 and even until the 80s, or job training and helping people figure out how they could earn, get the education and earn a living that would allow them to support their families. So that about empowerment is being with people after a crisis is passed and helping. But true to tonight and to thinking about where we're going in our next decade, our next 50 years, we hope not, but it's the idea that hope has been very important to us, and it really is how we see the family strengthening, the opportunities that bring us together, the community where everybody thrives, and it comes first from listening to the people who we work with every day and learning from them the challenges and the solutions, and working together for strong and equitable change. Over the years, in terms of our activism and things you've touched on, here's the Laurel Glade Apartments that built behind the USGS. I think right here, and many of the pictures are the same. We started meeting, the Reston Interfaith food van was going out and taking food, and volunteers ensuring that people were met. I will tell you that today Cornerstones will be launching a food hub, a place where we can rescue food and get trucks and cars off the road that have to drive to Lorton to the Capital Area Food Bank, and all of the food pantries and faith communities and schools that meet the needs of hunger relief in our area. We will be providing that backbone and that warehouse to help do that. And so in our mission, we've looked in the past, where we came and where we're headed. The Embry Rucker shelter, again, we heard a lot about that. I think that is certainly one of Cornerstone's first programs, but tonight, as many of you know, there are 20 tents on the hill behind Gwen's office, Supervisor Alcorn's office, because our shelters are full and we don't have enough affordable housing. So all these things existed and that we can celebrate, and things that we've worked on over the years, unfortunately, they are still important today. I mentioned activism and engaging with our community in the second. Did I go too far? Yes. Did I skip the? Well, we'll just skip over. We did a lot of work in the first 2 decades on those basic issues and building up and engaging with community. And it was the residents of this community, as you all know, that argued for the Reston a shelter, and you all are going to have a chance to talk about that in the coming year. We need a new shelter. It's 35 years old. It's tired. It doesn't meet the needs of its residents. We have kids and families and individuals together, and so I think we have a real opportunity as a community to ask ourselves, will we stay true to that initial vision, that community that said, yes, put a homeless shelter here in our backyard, and let's think about what we can do to help these individuals and families move into stability. We continued, as part of that, building more housing, but more scattered site in neighborhoods in Reston, Herndon, and Centerville. And so that was a lot of our growth and advocacy around why is there a need. But it was in the 2000s, as we saw, Herndon, of all the jurisdictions in the DMV, had the greatest proportionate growth in the foreign-born population of any city at that time. So it was in 2005 in the mid-census report. And so we saw a complete change in who was coming to build our buildings and work in our service. And so Cornerstones answered a call, and the volunteers and faith communities answered a call from the town of Herndon, who said, we've got a problem. We've got 100 people standing at a gas station, 7-Eleven, every morning trying to find work. Neighbors can't get to, into the store. Neighbors can't get past their sidewalks. It wasn't good for anyone. And it certainly wasn't good for the dignity of the people who just wanted to work to support their families. And so Sarah Newman and Reverend Stephen Smith-Cobbs and Trinity Presbyterian and a number of community members came together to create the Herndon Official Worker Center that did everything that it was challenged to do. And I think the most beautiful thing about this, and I think it's a model for how we think about shelter and what we want for our community going forward, is that the workers themselves set the rules for how people got jobs. We had on-site training from folks to give them in the trades and the skills. We had people come and help sign up for businesses and ensuring that people were paying taxes, so that if we ever have immigration reform or some type of amnesty, people can prove that they've been paying taxes into a system. And with that, when the site was shut down in a change of political leadership, in the height of concern about immigration, the faith community and the volunteers kept it going and invited many of these workers to come. Unfortunately, the problem in Herndon, it's back on the street, but it was something that made a difference at the time, and that is a model for several sites in Fairfax County. That's what we did. We did a lot of housing, and this is where I just want to show the apartments at North Point. For those of you that know, in North Point, the Village Center, the shopping center, we had, it's similar to what we've done with the other, but we developed this. There was a lot of community concern. It's in North Reston, a lot of what was that? And I remember Dave Earhart used to apparently sit at meetings as a Reston Interfaith board member, listening to the concerns of the community. What is their role for affordable housing? We were kind of used to the shelter, and we knew about the housing on the south side of Reston, but this was something that was going to be for the workforce, and yet there was a lot of concern. I think one of the most important things of this decade of Cornerstone service, and it really is what I think about where Reston needs to go, and certainly where Cornerstones needs to go, is that what came out of the community was a reminder and a recognition that certainly by Cornerstones, we were doing a lot of things to and for people. And we knew all the answers. People needed housing and they needed childcare, but we weren't stopping to talk to the people we were serving in Reston's 5 public housing neighborhoods. And we weren't stopping to talk to the students at school to find out what their needs and concerns were. And out of Fairfax County came an idea that we could think about opportunity neighborhoods, a place where we could create the conditions where every child and youth can thrive. Because as we look at our numbers in Fairfax County, highest graduation rates, right, one of the best school systems in the country, but the people we're failing are students and youth of color. The people we're failing, and you'll hear this in the Fairfax County strategic plan conversations, are the kids who are experiencing homelessness, kids who are in foster care, and kids who have been in and out of other institutions. And those are the kids who are not reaping the benefits of our system and who we see are kind of stuck where they go. So opportunity neighborhoods, and you see Andy Siegel there. We were at South Lakes, and Supervisor Hutchins was there with us for the launch of this conversation. And all this was about was rolling up our sleeves and talking with neighbors what matters to you. And what we heard at the start of this was concerns about bullying. Again, coming out of the time, the year, the politics, a lot of concern about terrorism, a lot of concern about immigration. Kids were feeling the effects. And we heard from parents, you know, how could they become better teachers? How could they be resourced? And so we've been doing this work within neighborhoods for quite a few years now, in Herndon and in Reston. Gwen Minton serves on our community advisory board. But this is, again, I think what brings most hope. A couple of our neighborhood ambassadors were hoping to be here tonight, and we're going to talk to you a little bit about that. But what you see here is a renewal. Pandemic kind of shut things down. Families have been, you know, buried in trying to keep their kids, you know, learning loss, feeding their children when they were home from school, dealing with all the job loss and everything that the pandemic brought. But we were together just last week and came up with a list of principles for which we're going to hold ourselves as we begin these conversations anew, and to invite other members of the community to join us around the table. And what I love about this is that first and foremost is that we talked about the importance of centering residents' voices, not just in sort of listening to their needs and reflecting that in our work, but in the advocacy as we talk with Fairfax County about the policies that change, that we talk with this at the state level with things that need to happen when we think about policies that advantage our youth. And I'll give you a great example of how Opportunity Neighborhoods works. Reston Community Center, always great about inviting the community to talk about the programming, and the ambassadors from, again, the 5 public housing neighborhoods in Reston where we have are working, and the ambassadors came together to talk with Reston Community Center, and as a result, a lot of the Muslim women and others felt very uncomfortable with going into the pool with the open windows and being able to swim, and the modesty issues and everything else. So as a result, Reston Community Center has reconfigured the pool. Lisa's been on the board, I know, and put up privacy panels in the dressing rooms and covered so people can't look over and watch people. There's women only swim at certain times, and that's what we hear from people, the things that matter. They are now using the wonderful amenities that Reston has to offer. They're part of the community and they're driving it. And that's just one of the outcomes. Later, those folks, many of these leaders, most of them women, come with us to Richmond and talk about what it really means, what the needs are, testifying on bills that are important to them. And so I think with Opportunity Neighborhoods, we have a real opportunity to make change. Before I close, I just wanted to let you know that this is another example of, you know, trying to get back to thinking about what are the needs and the issues of our community, and really taking a step back, coming out of the pandemic. What are the things, the themes that are important to people? And we had a forum last October with elected officials, people from the community, partner nonprofits, county staff, and the themes that came out, again, that are important to our community are these. Health and well-being being one of the most important, the isolation people have felt, the concerns, and we talked about it the other night, that parents have for the opioid crisis and how to talk to their kids about drugs. And then the next night after we met, Arlington had the terrible loss of a student, and this is what our parents are afraid of. And the parents in Herndon that come to our programs are terrified because some of them are not documented, and they live in communities where they see a drug interaction, they're either afraid to call the police or they're afraid to tell because they've been threatened to be killed. And they are still coming to meetings, building community, reaching out, and that's the kind of work as we think about the equitable community that Bob wanted. And so we have 4 working groups that any of you that are interested in being part of, we are exploring those issues, again, led by the people who are affected most. I go back to one of these quotes that Bob had given, and this idea of the faces in the community that we all know and love in Reston. It means so much to Cornerstones. We haven't done near enough that we need to do to think about really working towards justice and examining structural systemic racism that has kept people from owning homes, kept people from building assets. And I think it's something that with the leadership of our board of directors and others that we are really taking seriously, and we're looking to our community to see if we can make this happen. And I'm going to end, hopefully, with a lovely video that I think will tell you a little bit about why Cornerstones has hope for a brighter future.
All right, Fernanda, can you add something, please? All of these words, where do you want to go next?
There are some fights that you don't care about, and you wanted us to feel lost, unsafe, unloved. Feeling lost, feeling like someone that doesn't belong.
That is what my generation went through.
Oceans on fire, earth shaking, Mother Nature is trying her hardest. Black Lives Matter, gun control, immigration reform. Swiftly and deeply, the world is changing.
But be strong. Don't lose hope. Even if you are not ready for the day, it cannot always be night. Shine through the darkness. United.
Communities working together to see strength is the hope you can gift.
Education is a tool.
Gain our freedom when we learn. Unrivaled, unapologetic, passion, creativity, optimism, empathy will bring the greater days.
Let your words flow out and let people hear what you have to say. Don't hide in the shadows, scared, not knowing when to speak. Take control of our own stories.
Unprecedented, transformational change. Worlds in the glass of our souls. Youth of color demand to be heard. The more we talk about it, the truth.
A disguised segregation. Mental and social isolation. Income inequality is rising so fast, our data can't keep up.
America is more diverse than ever, but still segregated.
We know that this land was taken. Depression, anxiety, and anger. Tragedy and pain, rocking the world.
The weight on our shoulders.
Gen Z, a generational motivation. Enough is enough.
My purpose to give nothing but beautifulness. We are change, we are the future, we are hope.
that is the work that we've been doing with the youth. That's youth from one of our community centers. And the power when you sit and listen and see what these kids have to offer, if we can just find a way to get out of their way, to find a way to ensure that their families have stable housing, have what they need. And so that was wonderful. You were to ignore the QR code asking you to make a donation to the Reston Historic Trust, the Reston Museum, for keeping the motivation alive for the work that we do. So thank you all for having me here, and I'm ending.
Thank you, Emma and Kerrie. That was so good. We learned so much tonight. I'm going to open it up for questions if anybody has one. If you want to raise your hand, either for Emma or for Kerrie. Shelley.
Okay, Kerrie, I'm curious about your reach. You're obviously working in Herndon as well as Reston. So when did that come about, or has that been going on for a long time?
Really, in probably the 1990s, we started Town of Herndon, opened a Herndon Resource Center, and they asked us to come replicate some of the things we were doing here, but just a limited program there. And it was really in the 2000s when we had the day labor site, and when Sarah, we opened the Connections for Hope Center in 2010. And so again, Herndon has one of the highest low-income census populations in this region, but it matches Reston, but our communities are different. Like the Herndon community, it's a very different community, largely Hispanic, and we don't have natural community centers where people gather, and we don't have a sense of, frankly, community that Reston enjoys. So we try to take that in any community we're working in, try to take what we've learned here. So.
Great, thank you.